Good evening and welcome to the January 12, 2016 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. Welcome. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room on the shelves there. If you haven't already done so and would like to follow along with our proceedings tonight, please pick up a copy. It is the best way to follow along with what we'll be doing here tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our tonight's agenda, as well as a segment that is item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. So any members of the audience who wish to comment or ask questions about things that are not on our agenda, items of a general nature, that would be the time to come up to the podium and ask those questions. It is our proud tradition to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point, I would like to ask everyone to please join us in rising to recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Vitimo.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Mayor Tully.
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to approving minutes of prior council meetings. We have 2 sets of minutes to review tonight and presumably approve. Our executive session minutes from December 15th, 2015, and the minutes from our regular council meeting last week on January 5th, 2016. Are there any questions, comments, or changes to either set of minutes from anyone on the council? Seeing that there are none, may I have a motion to approve?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the executive session minutes of December 15th, 2015, and the council minutes from January 5th, 2016.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved as presented. Next, I have a proclamation that I would like to read. As everyone obviously knows, next week we will be observing Martin Luther King Day here in the United States, as well as in the village of Downers Grove. And as part of that recognition, I'd like to read the following proclamation. Whereas Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to civil rights and public service, and whereas January 18th, 2016 marks the observance of the federal legal holiday established by Public Law 94-144 to honor the birthday of Dr. King. And whereas Dr. King recognized that everybody can be great because everybody can serve, and during his lifetime encouraged all Americans to serve their neighbors and their communities. And whereas this day is not only for remembrance and celebration, but for a day of service to strengthen communities and empower individuals by focusing on bringing people together and breaking down the barriers that had divided us as a nation. And whereas thousands of Illinois residents use Martin Luther King Day by performing community service that benefits communities and neighborhoods and provides a fitting memorial to the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim, along with the rest of the country, January 18th, 2016 as Martin Luther King Day in the Village of Downers Grove, and recognize as a day of service throughout Illinois, and encourage all residents to think about service on that day in observing Dr. King's legacy. Thank you. That then brings us to item 4 on our agenda, which I described earlier. Item 4 is reserved for public comments of a general nature. Any members of the audience who have any questions or comments of a general nature, we would ask that you please come to the podium, introduce yourself, and we would welcome hearing from you.
All right.
And I know we have some comments
This
tonight.
thing is on?
It is on.
You can hear me?
Good evening.
Hi. All right, I will leave this copy when I'm done here, and I wrote it out because I wanted to have my thoughts organized. So, my name is Sheila Plemich, and I live at 5630 Webster Street. I'm here today because I have a stormwater drainage problem caused by the village that is not being addressed in a timely fashion that has left me at a greatly increased risk of flooding. The house and property next door to me at 5634 Webster were purchased by the village and scheduled for demolition to remain as open space for flood mitigation. Much of this project came from FEMA's HMGP program as a result of the April 2013 flooding. My home did not flood during that event, nor has it ever flooded in the 30 years that I've lived in this town. My home is now at a greatly increased risk of flooding as a result of the project next door to me, since significant amounts of water from that property are draining towards my home's foundation rather than away from it. as was the case pre-demolition. My sump pump is running 24/7 at intervals varying from every 1 to 5 minutes, and the water entering the pit is coming in from the bottom of the pit, not the drain tile. I've lived in this house for 30 years and am very familiar with normal operation of the pump, and this is highly abnormal. I've never had the water coming in through the bottom. It's always through the drain tile. I take protecting my house from water damage seriously. I have a strong main sump pump, 3 horsepower, a battery backup, and a whole house gas generator in case of an electrical power outage. And I also have an overhead sewer installed in my house. The house at 5634 was demolished from November 27th through November 30th, 2015. The excavated crawl space was filled with sand. Copious amounts, and I mean copious, amounts of additional fill and topsoil were left at the site, with other excavations left unfilled and ungraded, and they began collecting and redirecting stormwater at my house. We've had almost 7 inches of rain since November 30th, 2015. Not until January 5th, 2016 was the site cleaned up somewhat by hauling away 2 dump trucks of excess fill and topsoil and an unprofessional attempt at grade restoration made. And by professional grading, I mean you have levels, you have laser sights, you measure the land surface. That was not done. My sump pump has been running nonstop since November 30th, and the frequency has not diminished even since the site cleanup, and even during dry spells. We had 10 days of dry in December where it did not rain and the pump frequency did not idle. I first contacted the village on December 10th, 2015 to notify of the site issues and the abnormal sump pump behavior, and have provided written documentation and photos in support thereof. The village has not made a concerted effort to date to rectify the situation. We have discussed replacing my pump and assisting me with landscape restoration, and while I do appreciate those gestures, these measures don't address the root cause of why is this water being directed in my foundation, and when will it stop? Without the root cause being identified and corrected, my house is likely to flood as soon as we have a precipitation event where the combined inflow of water from the unidentified ground source plus the drain tile will overwhelm my ability to pump it out. I need the village to correct this situation no later than March 1st. I have contractors on standby who will work for and or with the village to identify and correct the drainage problems. I have read much of the village municipal code governing development projects such as the one at 5634 Webster, and am aware of numerous code violations, including stormwater ordinance, that were committed in the course of that project. No provision was made to prevent adverse alteration of drainage to my property. Again, my concern and reason for attending this council meeting is to secure a plan from the village for remediating the drainage problem and the accumulated damage to my house and land. We are talking about preventing my home from flooding, which was not an issue until this project next door to me began. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Obviously, the project itself was done as part of the village's stormwater remediation program, which is something that clearly this community takes very seriously. You're in good company in that regard. And the whole purpose of purchasing that house and demolishing it was to take it out of the floodplain. I understand that our stormwater management staff and public works staff are very much aware of the issues that you've identified, and I'm confident they'll continue to work and monitor the situation. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Please, other questions or comments from members of the audience? Welcome, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Klopsa, and I live at 5627 Webster. And the house next to me, 5631, is scheduled to be taken down also. So my concern is I don't want to have the same problem as Ms. Pummich has having, with the stormwater and stuff, because this house was built up a little bit higher because of the storm water and everything, the flooding. And I also have the creek running behind my property. So I am doubly with the water. Every time we get heavy rains, the water runs down my driveway and it floods my backyard. So I'm concerned when they take this house down, if they're going to leave this dirt high like it is now, or if they're going to level it and slope it towards the creek like it originally was years ago before they built this house. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here tonight, especially on such a cold night, and bringing all that to our attention. Again, both of these structures currently, in the case of the other one, formerly was in a floodplain. There is an identified floodplain that exists there. Part of this program is to use the FEMA funds to remove structures from a floodplain. order to try to address stormwater issues. Certainly, the intention is not to exacerbate them or create new ones. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. And as mentioned, I know that I have every confidence in the capabilities of our staff to implement the direction of the council in that regard. Other questions or comments from members of the public on items of a general nature? Hearing that there are none, we'll move right to, and thank you for those that have spoken already. We'll move to item 5, our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Any questions or comments from members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Vatimo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 6, our active agenda. We have 3 items on tonight's active agenda. First, I have a motion. Item 6A, do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance rezoning the property located at 6035 Middaw Avenue?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 6035 Middaw Avenue as presented.
I second the motion to rezone that property.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the council? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Vatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passed unanimously. Brings us to item 6B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the final plat of subdivision with exceptions for 6035 Middaw Avenue?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution approving the final plat of subdivision with exceptions for 6035 Middaw Avenue as presented.
I second the motion to approve the final plat of subdivision.
Questions or comments from any members of the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the village council? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Vatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter also passes unanimously and brings us to item 6C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance establishing Special Service Area Number 9 in the village of Downers Grove, Illinois?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance establishing Special Service Area Number 9 in the village of Downers Grove, Illinois as presented.
I second the motion.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Seeing that there are none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Vatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter also passes unanimously and brings us to the end of our active agenda. It brings us to item 7, our first reading or our workshop item agenda. These are, for tonight, this item is being presented for discussion and presentation and consideration only. No action will be taken at this time. As is customary, I usually ask our village manager and his staff to present the item for the public and the council's consideration. Good evening, Mr. Fieldman.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Thank you. Tonight's item on first reading agenda is consideration of an ordinance amending certain traffic provisions. And here to present background information on the proposed changes is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Newland. I always love the ones that are certain traffic restrictions. And
Good
now we're going to
evening.
find out specific traffic restrictions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to present 4 proposed parking and regulatory sign revisions. 3 of the items were presented to TAP, the Transportation and Parking Commission, at the December 9th meeting and unanimously recommended for approval. And they include the first one, which is Concord Drive. Concord Drive, just west of Springside. In this area, we get Downers Grove South High School students parking, and the regulations along these blocks have really evolved over the years as a balance between parking needs of residents and parking needs of high school students. What was presented to staff was some concerns from residents in this immediate area because they live quite a distance from crossroads where people could park, visitors to their homes. So they asked if we could make a minor modification to the on-street regulation and allow, restrict it to 3-hour parking only, which will free up about 3 additional spaces for them to use for visitor parking during the daytime, and then after about 1 p.m. as students start to leave, and in the evening and on weekends they have parking available on the street. This item was, as I said, presented to TAP. Residents along this street did come. They talked about various options, and this option seemed to be the best option for the residents, and TAP did recommend it. The second item is on Maple Avenue, east of Fairview, and this item is a result of the reconstructed roadway, which is part of the intersection with Fairview Avenue, and is striped as part of the queuing, turn lane and queuing area for cars turning left to go south on Fairview, which goes about 200 feet to the east of Wilcox. The lanes in this area are only 11 feet wide, and staff was proposed that this be restricted to no parking anytime through this intersection. The residents were notified. No residents objected to this proposed regulation, and TAP did recommend this for approval. The third TAP item is on Blodgett and 60th Street. This is in the vicinity of O'Neill Middle School. This was proposed by the residents in this neighborhood with concerns about students crossing here. In addition to the school, there's also a lot of activity at the ball fields, and a lot of kids from this neighborhood cross. Staff did make a full report on this. It doesn't meet the strict guidelines of warrants for an intersection, but after looking at the number of pedestrians at this intersection, there are provisions in the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, that does take into account the number of pedestrians, and this does meet the need for a all-way stop at this intersection. This item was also presented at TAP. Several residents from this area came, and staff and TAP approved it, recommended approval of it, as well as continued monitoring of this for speed and for enforcement. The fourth item that is being presented tonight is really a code change. This is in the vicinity of Clyde Estates, where with the changes we made for traffic calming in this neighborhood, we created a couple of T intersections in lieu of kind of a ramp type situation. It forces cars to come to a stop, and it helps to slow down traffic between Main Street and 59th Street on Washington Street. This stop control was included in the engineering plans that were presented to the neighborhood during the neighborhood meetings, and the purpose of this item tonight is really to codify that with the village code so that those stop signs are in the village code. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about any of these items.
Thank you. I'll start with questions or comments from members of the Village Council on any of these parking and traffic items. Questions or comments from members of the council? Very well. I'll ask if there are any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to any of these parking and traffic items. Clearly, it was a flawless presentation. Thank you.
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. That brings us to item 8, which is the mayor's report. I will reserve my comments for council member reports under item 11. That then moves us to item 9, which is the manager's report. Hello again, Mr. Fieldman.
Hello again. No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Actually, one question on your report. When are we scheduled for another coffee with the council?
Oh, that would be this upcoming Saturday at 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning at the library.
When I go back to item 8, the mayor's report, I want to remind everybody that there is a coffee with the council this Saturday, January 16th, from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. at the Downers Grove Public Library. It's an opportunity for residents to informally meet with the village council, members who attend as well as village staff in a more relaxed, informal environment, and most of us are not wearing a suit and tie. I won't say anything further. Well, that ends. Oh, now that really ends my report. We'll go to item 10, the attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Petrarca.
Only one item to present this evening. That is an ordinance amending certain traffic provisions. That is
Certain
all.
traffic
Certain
provisions.
traffic provisions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Now it comes to item 11, which is reserved for council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to report out on items of interest to the community or other goings on. So let's see, we'll start tonight with Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Very good. Commissioner Vitimo.
No report, thank you.
Commissioner Barnett.
I don't have any report, Mayor, but I have just a comment for my colleagues on the subject of stormwater. It really kind of came to mind tonight just because of the earlier comments from resident. I think we would do ourselves a favor by accelerating the time in which I don't know if it was even planned per se, but to kind of review some of the changes we recently made a year or so ago and see how well we're doing and how well we think stuff is working. I'm getting kind of mixed signals from folks out in the public as to the effectiveness or customer service friendliness of the actual ordinance provisions that we imposed. And so I'd like us to kind of put that in the margin as something to sooner rather than later try and accelerate getting into just reviewing. Maybe there's no changes necessary, maybe there's some. That was a pretty serious change, and I think one that was really worth doing. In and of itself, it was a compromise position, and so I'd just like to encourage everyone to kind of keep that in their margin and poke around and try and get some information for themselves and figure out if we need to revisit it and kind of have a review of what's working and what isn't.
Thank you. And to be clear, we're talking about the changes that went into effect regarding the sub pump discharge and
the changes we made as it relates to site runoff and
site runoff and sub pump discharge.
Right, correct.
Okay, just to make sure I had that clear in my head. I thought that's what you were talking about. And we implemented those approximately when? When was that
About
adopted?
a year ago, and it was in place for the recent spring construction season, last season.
Okay, so they've been in place for about a year. That's usually the rule of thumb to when we do check in on how something has been working, to see whether it is working as expected, whether there have been unforeseen consequences, or whether there may need to be further action taken. So that's probably a point well taken. I think that's generally what we do. Is when we do something, we say, well, let's check in on it a year from now so we have a full season to see how things have gone.
We have been monitoring the developments and construction activities that have been subject to those tighter restrictions, and we will be ready with a report and some recommendations very soon.
All right, and then you'll present that to us at a certain time.
A specific time, but we don't know for sure when, but it's coming up in the next couple of months.
Very soon will suffice. Thank you.
One more thing, Mayor. Thursday night, and I can't find it on my screen, I'm sure some of my colleagues can help me, but Thursday night is District 99 Foundation's Pizza Wars event. This is, I think, year 3, and it's a lot of fun. I hope people will look for an excuse to not make dinner on Thursday night and help support our local foundation that supports our high schools. It's a 7-member or 7-contestant, I believe, pizza cook-off, if you will, that kind of pits to some degree Woodridge against Downers, or at least it has in the past. Mayor, I don't know if you have a bet again this year. But it
wouldn't be fair this year because 6 out of the 7 are all Downers Grove.
Well, then let's double down.
I have a very good relationship with Mayor Cunningham, and I don't want to jinx it.
It's a fun event that would be a lot of fun for the more people, the merrier, and it's a good time. So take an excuse to not make dinner on Thursday night and support the local foundation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That's it.
Commissioner White?
No report.
Commissioner Olson? No report. I'll just pick up on Commissioner Barnett's comment. It's Thursday, January 14th, Pizza Wars, that is, the 3rd annual Pizza Wars, from 5:30 until 8 p.m. at Downers Grove High School. If you want to cast your vote or have your vote count, the pizza tasting ends at 7:15. The winner is announced at 7:30. Tickets are $10 in advance, $12 at the door. For more information, go to D as in David 99EF, E as in Edward, F as in Frank.org. And proceeds, as was pointed out from the event, benefit students of both Downers Grove North High School and also Downers Grove South High School. So just so folks know, the participants are Al's Pizzeria in Woodridge, who's up against some pretty heavy hitters in the name of Dan's Pizza in Downers Grove, Giordano's in Downers Grove, John and Eddie's in Downers Grove, Lou Malnati's in Downers Grove, Marco's Pizza in Downers Grove, and the returning 2015 champion Tortoises also in Downers Grove. It is a great event. I would encourage everyone to check it out. It's a good way on a cold night to sample some tasty slices and support a good cause. And that's actually all I was going to note in my report. So that brings us to item 12. We are adjourning tonight into executive session for 2 different reasons. May I have said motion, please?
Mayor Tully, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C11 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider litigation affecting or on behalf of the village which has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal. And I further move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the village.
I second said motion.
May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Bettimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, thank you. We are adjourned into closed session on those two stated grounds. Thank you for watching or being here tonight. Good night, and we'll see you next week.